Welcome, age of vintage society. Gone so soon! That's the best phrase I could remember at this time to describe this beauty goddess who kept millions of Americans glued to their TV sets with her bewitched outings. Elizabeth Montgomery may have taken her on-screen charm off camera, casting love spells on notable Hollywood actors. Unfortunately, she found herself entangled in one of the most incredible scandalous marital twists in history. How Elizabeth Montgomery got into the most scandalous marital twist. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Very beautiful blonde that had all it takes to make almost any man hunger for her privacy, yet Elizabeth Montgomery may not have enjoyed the kind of bliss her type rightly desired in her marriages, not when she was engrossed in tumultuous marathon marriages that were never a good compliment. Funnily enough, the growing list of more men waiting to fall under her spell among Hollywood's leading men is just too many for this stunning talent that it becomes very difficult for Elizabeth to maintain her emotional balance. Someone said Elizabeth Montgomery had the entire American TV audience under her spell between 1964 and 1972, when that epic Bewitched series dominated the airwaves. While the entire populace was being entertained, none of them ever bothered to know what went on behind the scenes among their screen heroes and heroines, especially the romantic mischiefs that played out. Critics say the widely successful series was made up of wild casts, Paul Lynde, Agnes Moorehead and Elizabeth Montgomery, because their activities created enough backstage conspiracy. Elizabeth Montgomery, the daughter of legendary entertainer mogul Robert Montgomery, rose to prominence as Samantha Stevens on the Bewitched show and became a household name at the time. Her very remarkable role in that TV drama endeared her to millions of fans who thought she represented the hearty housewife of the 1960s. Ironically, Montgomery was an embodiment of discreet secrets off-screen, just like the character she depicted in the movie. Are you also aware of her on-set love-making that allegedly ended 2 marriages? Unlike what her fans may have wished, Elizabeth Montgomery got a dose of troublesome romantic life. While her success in TV movies soared, the Bewitched star had few scores to settle in her private life, and it's quite sad that the more she tried to take control of her life, the more the forces against her happiness showed up. The much-admired screen character that made her a superstar was partially credited to her number 3 husband, William Asher. They two were said to have invented the idea for the show together. The show exceeded the expected success, airing for 8 seasons and continued to gain popularity several years after its last episode. I also think that Montgomery was among the sexiest and most desirable women in Hollywood at the time. The reason her beauty also tortured legendary icons like Elvis Presley, Gary Cooper and Dean Martin, among others. About her horrible relationships, many thought Montgomery may have been affected negatively by her estranged relationship with her father, the reason she kept searching for a fatherly figure in her life, and unfortunately found it in the much older men she kept falling in love with, while also hunting at least one distressed lover who maltreated her physically and emotionally. The marvel about her connection with men through her career that lasted for about 50 years is that she was attracted more to the bad guys, while thousands of the nice men that only wished she could remember their names never had the opportunity of getting closer to her. One of the illicit affairs credited to Montgomery that scandalously shocked the entertainment world is her romantic fling with Richard Michaels after he was contracted to be the Bewitched show director in the latter part of its seasons. No one can say exactly what happened. We only hear that he immediately fell under Montgomery's spell and was glued by her attractive aura while the show progressed. Just by twisting her witch's nose, Elizabeth Montgomery could get anything she desired on screen, but I'm not sure if she did the same off-screen. That salacious affair between Montgomery and Michaels appears to have hurriedly ended double marriages, especially Elizabeth and Asher, a man who carried a torch for her until his death at the age of 90. though that illicit affair wasn't the first ungodly romance that rocked their marriage. Asher allegedly had several eroticisms during the 9-year nuptial. He was frolicking with elite actresses in Hollywood at the time, regardless of his marriage, so it was more of Elizabeth paying him back on his coin. Elizabeth Victoria Montgomery is a California-born Hollywood actress whose parents, Elizabeth Allen and Robert Montgomery, were deep in the entertainment industry. Her elder sister was said to have died as an infant, with some saying that the incident contributed to the kind of relationship she had with her father. After graduating from the Spence School in New York City, Montgomery took dramatic lessons for 3 years at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan, where she positioned herself to continue where her parents started. Elizabeth's not too palatable relationship with her father may have come from the fact that the man was not a very decent husband to her mother, plus her first acting experience appearing at her father's concert, but how it metamorphosed into serious strain in her life and career is very unfortunate. Elizabeth detested her legendary father, though she respected his works. The reason she searched for a man who wouldn't be so cold and withdrawn as she thought he is. The hatred was so severe that Elizabeth had to restrict her father from visiting her at some point because she didn't want to connect him with her kids. She was quoted to have said later in life that her father hasn't always encouraged her acting career. She had noted that for years. She had told him that she wanted to be an actress and in movies, but no encouragement on that. As such, she did not think he was in favour of a movie career for her. When in 1954 she fell in love with one of the glitterati in New York, Frederick Gallatin Kamen, Elizabeth went in for love with one eye on Hollywood fame. Though her father was thrilled about the marriage because of the age semblance of the couple, things didn't quite fit in for the young couple. While her husband wanted a model housewife, Elizabeth desired Hollywood career growth, which soon led to the briefness of the marriage as the couple parted a year later. Kamen would later say that she wanted to be prominent in Hollywood at all costs, and he didn't see how he could fit into it out there. Not long after, Elizabeth met and fell in love with Oscar-winning actor Gig Young. The duo cemented their union in 1956, but something did not quite impress her father about the union. Young was about 25 years older. At 48 he was almost her father's age mate. Then Elizabeth was just 22 and highly lovesick with an alcoholic-loving Young. So it did not go down well with dismayed Mr. Robert, though he did not prevent them from marrying each other. It did not take time before the real colour of the marriage manifested. Young became emotionally abusive. Beautiful Elizabeth tried to save her marriage and make him a better man to avail. After about 8 years of endurance, the union ended in 1963. But thereafter a shocking revelation emerged that she may have been very lucky to have escaped the marriage alive, because Young shot the second wife who replaced her to death, and took his own life. That was how Elizabeth Montgomery, whose private life was in a serious mess at the time, got herself entangled with the famous director and producer Asher, and she began working on the Bewitched show. Their union lasted until 1973, when they divorced. But before this time a lot of things happened. The almost 10 years marriage produced 3 children, including Robert and Rebecca, whose pregnancies were fused into Bewitched as Samantha's pregnancies in the movie. Though Asher was still a much older man, the marriage continued, as the show took over the broadcasting frequencies. It was during the 8th year of its run that Montgomery fell in love with Michaels. That unholy affair shocked both Asher's marriage with Elizabeth and Michael's marriage in 1971. To say the obvious, though, himself a womanizer, Asher was deeply distressed. The immediate result of that regrettable illicit affair was the destruction of the 2 marriages, and is even said to have caused the end of the series. As soon as the show halted in 1972, Elizabeth moved in with Michaels in a relationship that lasted for about 2.5 years. One person who could not come to terms with the outcome of the incident is Asher. In the latter part of his life he yearned and cried his heart out for his loss of Elizabeth, and admitted that he was responsible for their split. Interestingly, this brave director couldn't come out of the spell cast on him by the glamorous Elizabeth Montgomery. Recall that Elizabeth was Asher's second marriage after he divorced his first wife, Danny Sue Nolan, and the mother of his kids. Asher lived an intricate life with women at the time. It was said that the moment he met Elizabeth after directing her in Johnny Cool that year, he didn't hesitate to take her to bed, and remarkably he was reported to have been in a simultaneous love relationship with 3 other women when he married Elizabeth. Elizabeth Montgomery was no doubt spectacular and fascinating, and was looking for love at the time. Everyone knew about that, says Herbie Pilato, who wrote about the couple. It was reported that her character, Samantha Stevens' trademark nose twitch, was a coincidence inspired by Montgomery's act. Used to twitch her nose each time she was angry. That's why her then husband and bewitched producer Asher thought it wise to accompany it with a xylophone sound effect. With that epic bewitched scandal and subsequent divorce, Montgomery still went home rich and happy because she owned 20% of the show and must have made millions of cash from residual income. A good way to have the last laugh, I must say. Thank God she did not quit acting earlier, because initial frustration almost made her go that lane before the Bewitched show began. It was Asher who encouraged her to keep pushing. Perhaps something new could come up. "Don't quit, you have too much talent," he was quoted to have said. Regardless of her pampered childhood, Elizabeth didn't look like those cosseted ladies you find in society. The more reason her charm was very effective on so many of the men that came across her. Elizabeth refused to play the Hollywood game and would never go to their parties or try to advertise herself as a way of begging for any form of consideration for a movie role. She avoided carefully the casting couch syndrome because she wanted her work and her talent to speak for her and nothing else. She was among the young beauties that infatuated the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. They too had brief moments of pleasure that took them nowhere. This blonde beauty was nearly Elvis Presley's age when they co-starred in Kid Galahad, after which the famous philanderer wanted her on his bed, but her much older husband was not happy when he saw Elvis toying with her on set. It seemed Presley later moved on without Elizabeth. Another great Hollywood name that made her numerous love life is Gary Cooper, who also met her on a movie set of The Court-Martial of Billy Mitchell, after which they got things rolling for a while. He was an older man, so he seemed a choice for Elizabeth. Reports say a stagehand had met the two alone in Cooper's dressing room, an incident that sparked the on-set scandal. The like of Dean Martin will also suffice. Dean was smitten with her when they worked together on Who's Been Sleeping in My Bed. He was very romantic and loved women too, but in all the advances none really enticed Elizabeth as much as her older lovers. She had a rough time with former ballet icon Alexander Godunov, who was also an actor. He was deeply into alcoholism, and she was unfortunately drawn to him. Was she hoping to rescue him from his miserable lifestyle? Only Elizabeth could tell, but the relationship was not funny by any standard of measurement. While she was dating Godunov, Elizabeth had a romantic connection with the man who would become her final husband. Godunov was also abusive and himself in a self-destructive trend, so it was obvious that there was no future with him. When Montgomery finally calls it quits with Godunov, the fella fell into a sinking spiral, as he was said to have lost himself in an alcoholic vapour that eventually led to his death. They said she walked away from the fake Hollywood lifestyle because she detested the things done over there and the people she met. Elizabeth was always careful with the roles she played because of her love-hate relationship with acting. It allowed her to choose the best that suits her personality, like that of the Bewitched role. I guess for the same reason she ended up as the Queen of TV movies. Worthy of note is Elizabeth's on-set battles with Hollywood old-timer Agnes Moorehead, who appeared in the movie as her mother. Agnes loved Dick York so much that she didn't want to let him go when he was about to be replaced. She turned the news of his replacement to tears on a particular day. The issue was that Elizabeth and Dick York had a raging relationship off-camera. Elizabeth became tired of the Bewitched project and threatened to quit after its 5th season, but she was appeased and given a very juicy payoff that she couldn't reject. In 1993, Elizabeth decided to give a final chance in marriage as she entered into her 4th matrimony with actor Robert Foxworth, having befriended him for almost 20 years. They remained together until she died in 1995 at the age of 62. Her death was sudden, just 6 weeks after colon cancer was found in her. Those around said Elizabeth teased that she needed a pina colada in her IV drip, but when in her final moment at her 26-room Beverly Hills mansion, she did not want her family members close to her deathbed. She just wanted to die alone, so people would not see it happen. The romantic threads around Elizabeth Montgomery only can be described as very complicated, but there were others with romantic twists. Why Kim Novak had to hide her interest of love. Watch this video now.